You got action.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is 10:12, and we're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to first thank everybody for coming out this morning and spending their Saturday with the Ward 7 Dams organization. There's been a lot of things happening in the city, so I'm hopefully you and all your loved ones are staying well and being safe. And with that being said, I want to take a moment to once again thank everybody for coming out to the fourth public Ward 7 Dams meeting. And at this moment, we just want to make sure that we have a quorum. And I would like our recording secretary, Mr. Lawrence Davin, to take attendance.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and go through this row. Letitia Atkins. Tiffany L. Brown.
Present.
Excellent. John Caposi. Kevin Chavis. Lawrence Davin here. Dorothy Douglas. Tony Duggar. Wendell Felder.
Present.
And I see Letitia Atkins is present. Thank you. Thenie Freeman. And also some can't unmute themselves. I'm sorry. There we go. Thenie is here. Vincent Gray. Lauren Grimes. Philip Hammond. Delia Halsil.
Present.
Thank you. Chioma Iwaha. LaQuinn Dominique Jenkins. Alan Karnofsky. Deanna Marie Lewis. Kareem Marshall.
Present.
Kareem McCarney. Brandon Scott. Napresha Taylor.
Present.
Keith Towery.
Here.
Masiki Valentine.
Present.
And Dexter Williams. Mr. Chair, we do have quorum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Recording Secretary. Guys, before we go any further, between the last time we met and now, there have been a few individuals, which I'm sad to report, who have lost their lives because of gun violence. And, we just want to take a moment of silence just to recognize those individuals. Our prayers go out to their families as well. So before we proceed, I just want to take a moment of silence just to recognize the folks who have unfortunately lost their lives to gun violence. Okay, guys, thank you. Next, could you go back, Mr. Recording Secretary? For folks who have attended this meeting in the past, they know that I like to go over meeting norms. So I just wanted to briefly go over some meeting norms. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. Utilize that raise hand feature. Also, if you're not speaking, please mute yourselves. When it is your time to speak, everyone has 2 minutes to talk. And if you don't have a question, and it's burning and you want to get it out, you can also utilize the chat box, and you can put your question there as well. So I just wanted to briefly run through those meeting norms. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give residents an opportunity to go over today's agenda. I always send the agenda out to the executive body prior to the meeting. I sent it out on Thursday. So I know members of the executive body have had the opportunity to review today's agenda. Now, if there are no amendments to the agenda, then I approve the agenda. Next slide, please. This is not, you gotta go back, Mr. Secretary.
There we go.
Okay, great. So it's fun time. So the chair's report. So guys, since the last time we met, a lot has happened within the Ward 7 Dams meeting. Following last month's meeting, we had a community canvas in precinct 92. For those who do not know what precinct 92 is or where it is located in the Kenilworth Eastland Gardens community. It was a good turnout. We engaged with folks. We knocked on doors and let them know, like, hey, we're your Ward 7 Dams organization. These are some of the things that we're trying to do moving forward. We signed up some new folks to join our meeting, and we also learned best practices and key takeaways from that experience. I know that we wanted to have some additional canvassing activities, but we're going to postpone until going into the fall. But don't be surprised if you see us or see some material left on your door or on one of your neighbor's doors in the near future. In addition to that, guys, we participated in two parades on the 4th of July. We've had, for those who are familiar with the Barracks Road Parade, which is in the Capitol Hill, Eastern Market community. Ward 7 was fully represented there. We wanted to support the 4th of July or Independence Day. And then we also went to Ward 3, where we saw some of our Ward 7 neighbors from Hillcrest participating in the Palisades Parade. So those were good events. I saw some folks on the call there. So I just want to thank you guys for just being active in the organization. And as more activities and events unfold, we look to see as many people out there as possible. Ward 7 wants to be deeply represented. In addition to that, guys, there was a lot of uh, trash talking on social media for the upcoming, for the kickball game that we had against Ward 8. I want to give a shout out to a couple of people who played MVP roles. If trophies were given, I see Mr. Tyrell Holcomb. He did his thing out there. You had Tiffany Brown who did her thing out there. Napresha, she was a superstar out there, just to name a few in the interest of time. For those who are not aware of how the game went, Ward 7, we were up 4-0. And then because Ward 8 do things the way Ward 8 wants to do things, they call it a 10-minute recess. And once that 10-minute recess, 10 minutes ended up being 20 minutes. And from there, guys, we gave them the rest that they needed. And then they ended up coming back and the game ended 6-6. Which resulted in a tie. And the good thing is, guys, it was an opportunity, which is most importantly, for us to come together and fellowship as East of the River. We registered a few folks, and folks were excited because that has never happened before. So as we continue to have more events like that, I want to strongly encourage folks to come out and join and represent your ward. Next, guys, I do want to let folks know that we're not going to meet in the month of August. However, we do plan to release a new Ward 7 Dams newsletter so we can keep folks abreast of some of the things that is happening within the organization. So any event you decide not to come to the meetings, then you still can see what we're doing in the organization. There has been conversations pertaining to if we're going to meet in person and starting in the fall, or if we're going to continue to remain meeting virtually. And I would say that depending on this new variant of COVID, and if the district goes into a different direction, that will really determine if whether we meet in person or not. I will say that we are planning the September meeting will most likely be in person. And once we confirm that it is, I will make sure that I blast it on the listservs and make sure that I keep folks abreast of where the meeting location is. 9 times out of 10, though, guys, we probably meet at Dorothy Heights Library, where the Ward 7 Dems met prior to COVID. And as we continue to go into the fall, don't be surprised if we were to switch up the meeting locations. Last but not least, I just want to let folks know that we do plan to have 3 fundraising activities before the end of the year. We're going to start blasting marketing materials within the next couple of weeks or so, I would say middle of August. So be on the lookout for that. We look forward to seeing you guys. One of the activities, just to name one of them, as the chairperson, we're going to have a fundraising activity in which folks can party with the chairperson. So we're going to have a good time. Hopefully everybody that's on this call comes out and bring a friend. We do recognize that it takes money to run an organization, and we appreciate everyone who has donated or plans to donate. So at this point in time, that concludes my chairman report. I want to open the floor up to our officers, starting with our recording secretary to give his report out.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, guys. So I'm going to give the minutes from the last meeting, and they go as follows. Of course, the chair gave his report. He spoke on behalf of the Ward 7 Dems at David Rat's homegoing service. He also raised awareness about the June 26th canvass. He also mentioned that he made appointments to committees and gave an update on a 100-day plan. I also launched a poll for the logo choices. The minutes were accepted. Sergeant at Arms Brown made a motion to accept the minute meetings. The minutes. I'm sorry, guys. And also, Masiki Valentine gave an update on the young Ward 7 Democrats. He also asked to reach out to him if you have any information or would like to join his efforts. We also had presentations from Council Members Gray and Council Members White. Then we moved into our old business. Treasurer Scott gave a budget assessment. Second Vice Chair, and we also approved to create the annual budget, the savings account, and a brokerage account. That motion was passed. We went into new business. The second Vice Chair gave an update on the bylaws, and we also spoke about the Kickball Classic ran by Miss Tiffany L. Brown. It was amazing, and we adjourned that meeting. Now, I move that we accept those minutes as read. Do I hear a second? I do see a second. Let me unmute everybody really quick. You are now able to unmute yourself. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, there is a second. Sorry.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second that that the previous meeting minutes have been accepted. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. Mr. Secretary, please, or you can just say nay or yay.
Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You can unmute yourself. All against, say nay. Seems as though the ayes have it.
Got you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
No problem.
Next on the agenda is our treasurer's report. Mr. Scott is feeling under the weather. So guys, I just want to briefly let folks know that we have $1,665.17 in our account. But we do, I just got a text message that there were some additional checks made, so that the account balance most likely will increase. We will have that during our next meeting, but we're in good standings, and I'm excited about that. Next slide, please. So guys, next on the agenda is our guest speakers. So today we have the privilege of hearing from a Ward 7 native. For those of you who do not know Ebony Rose Thompson, Ebony Rose Thompson is a native of Ward 7. I think she's a 3-term ANC commissioner. She's been very active and instrumental in the community and ensuring that our young folks are educated and have the resources that they need to be successful in school, or not only in school, but in life as well. She's played an immeasurable role in moving the Ward 7, or not the Ward 7, moving the Fletcher Johnson project in Ward 7 forward. And, Ebony, we appreciate you for all your good work. Thank you for coming out today to talk about what folks should look forward to as the district opens back, the schools going into the fall. So Ebony, at this point in time, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for having me. Good morning. And I guess I don't really have to come out. I just had to log on. It makes it super easy. And thank you for all the love in the chat. No pressure, I guess. I was able, super proud of myself, to put together a couple of slides to just help us walk through. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Is it clear? Like, because I know it gets. I'll share that in a moment. Women.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 screens. Forgive my privilege struggle. So, as you all know, I sit on the State Board of Education. I know that the state board's role in kind of some of the things that are most important sometimes feels a little unclear. And so I'm going to do my best to provide an update from the state board perspective, let you know like what some of our priorities are, and just focus a little bit on what's happening with reopening and budget. I also just in general want this to be more of a conversation because I was able to put this together thinking about what I've heard and what I've learned from residents, educators, and it's always, and as a representative, like that literally is our title and our job description. In order for us to be able to do that, we need to be in conversation with you. So DC State Board of Education, we're a policy board. I put that first because that seems shocking to some people because we're not a local board. That means we actually, have to work with the council to get things in the budget. We don't get to hire and fire the chancellor. I can go down the list of the things we can't do, but I would prefer to think about what we can do. So what we can do and what we're supposed to do is really set like the expectations for the things students learn. That's things like high school graduation requirements, academic standards, things around educator quality. So when it comes to like licensure, what are the programs, how are people getting into the teaching profession? Those are the things we care about. We do actually have a committee structure, and I want you all to know which committees I sit on. So you'll know like what my time is spent around, not just in board meetings, but in board business. I sit on the Educator Practice Committee. I sit on the Advocacy and Outreach Committee, and I'll talk about some of the things we have going on around advocacy and outreach. And I sit on what is an ad hoc committee, which is the SBOE Governance Committee. I'm happy to talk about that work as well. As far as the SBOE Governance Committee, I should explain that a little bit. I started by saying like, hey, we're a policy board. we're not a local board, it's different. All of that is true. That is because we decided as a district to move from having a school board like we had when I was a kid to restructuring and giving the mayor complete control of education. As the SBOE, we've heard a lot of concerns, especially during reopening from parents and families about just being able to navigate that system, get responsiveness from that system, having transparency in that system. As a result, we are looking at how can we better, like what recommendations can we make to improve that system. And so we're doing our homework, as one council member called it. And we are starting with like looking across the country to say like what places are most similar to us, what do they have going on, how is that working? And we will issue a report. Before we issue that report, we'll do actually a lot of stakeholder engagement because we want to know the pain points. Most people don't think about governance if you're not like, I'm a little nerdy and wonky, I'm just built that way. But if you're not somebody that's thinking about governance on a daily basis, that doesn't mean you don't interact with governance. When I say governance and I hear governance from constituents, it's things like when somebody comes to me and says, hey, my kids, in the case of Beers, my kid's school doesn't have operating sprinklers. And we followed up with the council, we followed up with the mayor, we're not getting a response, it's not being addressed. And we have to deal with different agencies to get that done. So like that doesn't just live in DCPS, it goes to DGS. As a parent, you probably should not have to lobby the mayor to get what you want. That's a governance issue. Or if someone comes and sends me an email and it's like, you know, my kid got suspended from school and I don't know what's going on. And I thought these were the policies and procedures, but I took it to the public charter school board. They kicked me back down to the school. And now we're having X, Y, and Z issues. Those are governance issues. So our families do really experience governance in sometimes a really just confusing way. And we want to look at like, how can we just make that better for families? I'll talk about what's in our budget priorities a little bit later in the presentation, but we did send a budget priorities letter to council. It actually focuses on both what is happening in the district budget, like the budget we do every year, and some things having to do with reopening and recovery. And then I just want to highlight that our next SBOE meeting, we are technically on recess. It means something, but it doesn't mean anything. Stuff is still going. But we are on recess. Our next meeting is August 17th at 5:30 p.m. I will make sure at the end of the presentation to put the link in the chat to our website because that's how you can sign up for our meetings. But we want to create that space to talk about reopening. The state board is really the only place you can go on a monthly basis and just talk about what you want to with relation to education issues. It doesn't have to be what our topic is about. So like last month, we had a panel on homeschooling and Jimmy Williams came. Not as a panelist, but he showed up to our public meeting as both a Ward 7 resident and a community provider and talked about literacy. That was really helpful for the board. It really helps frame our thinking. And I want to make sure that Ward 7 residents know that at any point you can show up and talk about what's happening with your schools, with your child's education, with what you're seeing. All right, next slide, reopening. So this summer, I am spending some time along with my SYEP fellow, who's actually an IDEA student, having some meetings with principals. I have learned that principals are in some cases just as confused, and it's DCPS and charter as we are with regards to a lot of the things happening with reopening, unfortunately. In a lot of cases, people are relying on their individual schools to communicate with them about reopening, re-enrollment. And in the case of charter schools in particular, I'll share some of what DCPS has shared. You really do have to lean on your individual school community to tell you what's happening. This past Thursday, there was a council hearing on reopening. My takeaway, I did not testify because I was working. I do have another job in addition to being a state board rep. But this past Thursday was the council hearing on reopening. My takeaway is everybody is confused. Most people have questions about what does rapid testing look like, if that's going to continue. What do the mask wearing regulations look like, especially when it comes to things like lunch, like indoor dining. And then just generally, like, how are we going to handle the mixture of vaccines as DC continues to reopen? I put the fact that there was a council hearing on Thursday about this on the slide because the record is still open. And so even if you did not get a chance to testify on Thursday, I'm encouraging people to go and still continue to go on the record. That opportunity has not passed you up. We did have some Ward 7 residents testify. Like I know I saw Patricia Sanford testifying. We had people talk about just what's happening with the students who have special needs and how they've not being served. But we really do need a fuller picture because it's the only way really to push not just DCPS, but OSSI and the DC Public Charter School Board and the individual charter LEAs to just be more upfront about answering the questions that families have. Last thing I'll say about reopening, and I'm happy to answer questions people have, is that I am partnering as the state board rep with a bunch of different organizations to have a back to school event on, this should say August 21st, y'all, but I'll change it, on August 21st. I know that Chairman Felder has been part of those conversations, and the DIMS is one of those organizations that will be partnering with us, in addition to organizations like ANC 7F, because it'll be in 7F, Marshall Heights, Community Development Organization, East River Family Strengthening Collaborative. I'm probably missing some people and I apologize. But we're planning to give away at least 1,000 book bags. And we're also inviting, we'll have a bunch of different community resources that just matter for families. The goal is not just to give away book bags, not just to push people toward resources, but also to get young people vaccinated. One of the things that's a priority for me, like COVID is the elephant in the room. That's going to dictate what happens, not just in schools, but in communities, in you all's households. That's what's happening. We actually have some of the lowest numbers in Ward 7 as far as vaccination rates when it comes to people 12 to 17. That's an issue, not just for Ward 7, but for the whole city. And let me tell you why. It is an issue because our kids actually go to school all over the city. So maybe, I want to say it's upwards of 70% now of our kids do not attend their neighborhood school. So if our kids aren't getting vaccinated, that means the city's kids aren't getting vaccinated because we're only second to Ward 8 in the number of school age children we have. And so we will have COVID vaccines available. I know that there's a large community of people who are like, I don't want to get vaccinated under any circumstance. They're probably not going to come and get a book bag and a vaccine. But there's other people who really just, if you make it convenient for them, will do it. And so that's really our target for this event. As we share, we'll have like a bigger communications launch. But as we share materials, please share them. Like, please encourage people to come because you never know like who that can help. And I wanted to capture, because DCPS has issued some guidance. This is essentially the breakdown of what they said they were going to do for anybody who hasn't seen it. These are their health and safety measures for reopening. Note, masks are required. It is the only thing that is required. Vaccines are not required for COVID. That is both for students and for teachers. I want to be very clear about that because there were a lot of questions about that. I'm not saying that this is something I agree with or don't. I just want to be clear with what DCPS is proposing. Unfortunately, because each charter is its own school district, you have to go to your school if you are a charter parent to know what they are saying they're going to do around reopening. So this only accounts for DCPS only, look at the bottom. This only accounts for DCPS. I want to be very clear about that. And then the last thing, and this is actually probably my last slide, and then we can kind of have a conversation, but budget. So the first reading of the budget was this past week. A couple things that and I'll share our budget priorities letter. A couple things I want to highlight that have just been big pushes across the city. So one is like just school-based mental health in general, a push to make that fully funded. We included that in our SBOE priorities letter, along with some other things that I'll share. But I also want to highlight, and that actually is in the budget and is fully funded. We want to thank all the council members for just kind of understanding that. That's not, that makes sense. Let's just do it. The other thing I want to highlight is actually the decoding dyslexia bill, maybe, and Shih Tzus. Hold on. Yeah, Mel and Shih Tzus don't go together. The decoding dyslexia bill, I want to highlight that because it's something that actually was passed and championed by Ward 7 residents, but affects the whole city. So some of you may or may not know Carla Reed Witt, she's a parent, and Sheila Carson Carr, who is a former ANC for 7F01. This is their brainchild. This is their baby. And they have been talking to not just like me, but everybody for years about this. And it actually requires screening for dyslexia because so many people don't know that they have it. And there's a stigma around it. And so as far as us being a ward that has some of the lowest literacy rates in the city, this is a huge deal. So it was actually passed, this legislation, I want to say last council session, but it wasn't funded. So it is now fully funded. But I just want to kind of highlight that, not just because it has like, you know, it's a good thing, but like literally, like that was born out of Ward 7 and Ward 7 advocacy. So don't let people tell you that we're behind anybody else, and they're amazing to do that. Let me show you what's in our SBOE letter, so you know what we prioritize. So this is what we sent to the mayor back in February. It is posted on our website. I can't figure out a better way to show you than this, but we, like many others, leaned on at-risk weight, overall increase as far as adequacy. So we said increase the education budget by 4%. We want to increase the at-risk weight. So that's going to be things like English language learners, which we do have some in Ward 7. That's going to be things like students who are over age and undercredited, students who are on free and reduced lunch, homeless, more money for them is essentially what we're saying. We ask that they include, this is for SEL, which is actually different than mental health. SEL is like, I think of it as like climate things. So like, how does the school feel? Like, how are we just, when you walk into a school, like what is it that the culture is? And how are we supporting educators and making it a culture that supports, affirms our students? So we wanna make sure that there's money for that in the budget. We also asked for money in the budget that makes sure there's a counselor for every 250 students. That is actually the school counselor associations bar for like what's adequate. More counselors, great. But we're actually not at this goal. And so we wanna make sure this is true. We champion school-based mental health like everybody else. That was something that we were looking at cuts for, and we're no longer looking at cuts for. So that's important. And then the last thing that's in our letter is that we're supporting programs around like restorative justice in schools and violence interruption. So that's pretty much the highlights of our letter that I haven't covered. I should acknowledge, and we also, because we're an agency, so we have to ask for money too. We do that whole dance with everybody else. Our sister offices, which are part of our agency, are the ombudsman and the student advocate. The student advocate, Dan Davis, actually also is a Ward 7 resident, which I'm super proud of, and he does a lot of good work. A lot of what you are seeing and hearing around safe passage, Dan has been working on for years. And so we are encouraging that both of those offices actually have the supports they need, because they're small offices. Like, we're talking 2 or 3 people in each office, and they're the offices parents can reach out to and ask questions. So like the ombudsman, literally, like that example I gave about like my kid got suspended, you know, I think it's some funky stuff going on. You can reach out to the ombudsman's office and they will triage that for you. When I say triage, like they'll follow up, they'll be like, hey, let me contact the school, let me figure out the policies, let me walk you through what's happening so that we can make sure that student is getting what they need. That office has, for real, like 2 people in it, y'all. And everybody in the city can call. So we are advocating for more resources for the ombudsman. The student advocate is a little bit different, but they work in lockstep in a really important way. So like as we see different themes start to emerge for what people are calling the ombudsman for, the student advocate's office is actually the one that says, all right, this is a trend and it's a problem. How can we address this systemically? That's actually one of the ways we started to get to safe passage legislation, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But they'll work with offices like the DME. They'll work with council members and doing like briefings to try to create, in some cases, legislation that actually tackles the problems we're running into. So those are 2 really important offices. And part of our ask as the board is that we are making sure they have what they need so they can continue to serve families. Last thing, safe passage. Safe passage, a couple things on this. So first, like, I want to be clear about what our safe passage efforts have been as a board and as a city. Our safe passage efforts have largely involved things around like the violence students face on their commute. So it's all about keeping students safe so that, you know, they're not running into neighborhood beefs or getting jumped or have a safe place to go and feel safe. Can they walk into a store? There are efforts around that. We as newer board members, actually, and my colleagues from Ward 8, Dr. Reed, and Ward 6, Dr. Sutter, have been great partners in this, actually, in expanding that definition of safe passage to address all the things that our students are facing. So, for example, you all know that people drive through Ward 7, and we've had actually too many instances where kids have been like literally hit by cars. I know I saw Commissioner Holcomb on this call earlier, and like 7F has been working, especially with like East Capitol Street and DC Prep right there. Like we actually lost a young person who was hit right there. Safe passage as a definition for the city does not include things like that, and it should. It needs to. Like it needs to include those traffic incidences because our students really are crisscrossing the city. And so we're working to support that. The other thing it doesn't really address is just like the difficulty and challenges. There are some things in this budget that we are, in the safe passage legislation that the board has proposed that starts to get at that. One of the things that I want you all to be on the lookout for is actually what is called micro transit routes. Micro transit routes are literally going to be like these little clusters of places where we say, you know what, it's actually really hard for, I don't know, the students who live in Kenilworth Eastland Gardens area to even get to the metro station. So like we'll support them in like having a shuttle that gets them out of their community so they can go to whatever schools they go to. So if you're in like a neighborhood, if you think about Ward 7, not all of our neighborhoods are accessible by metro. Some of our bus routes are kind of janky. Sometimes you have to walk long distances. And so like that engagement and who is doing that work is going to be really important. And it's part of this safe passage legislation that we want to, as that rolls out in October, next budget, be really focused on that because it's going to matter for our kids. So I want to highlight that. Oh, and I should say, because I see Commissioner Douglas, safe passage, last thing about safe passage and quality of life issues. So people know the bridge fell down. That's not a secret. We have like, clearly there's a bridge missing. crossing 295. I joined not just Commissioner Douglas, but several other commissioners and former commissioners in testifying at the hearing or roundtable, I believe it's a roundtable, on the bridge collapse. One of the things that came out of that, well, multiple things came out of that, but one of the things that came out of that is actually we're going to be hosting council members Che, Gray, and Henderson for a walk on Monday, so they can better understand the difficulties and the importance of transit access in that area. If you listen to that hearing, a lot of questions went to Director Lott about accessibility, what the plan was, and unfortunately, many of the things that residents have been saying for years around everything from flooding to having to cross several lanes of traffic to just feeling safe crossing that bridge were kind of dismissed. And so essentially we said to the council members, we can show you better than we can tell you. So they'll be joining us for a walk on Monday. And we expect, we're doing that both to protect the money that was put in the budget, which almost, by all indications, the night before that hearing wasn't gonna happen. So the 25 million that's put in the budget for that bridge, because I believe it's a safe passage issue. I also just believe it's a quality of life issue, period. Protecting that, but also I'm starting a conversation to think about how do we follow up on the concerns that residents have been voicing for years and remedy them? Because it's not like this bridge just fell down out the blue and that's the only issue. And how do we start a dialogue that will create something new and better and more accessible? Like, it's actually not enough to just put the bridge back. We actually want to make sure that the communities who are north of 295 are able to access the city in a way that makes sense for kids, for families, for everybody. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I really am appreciative to the commissioners, especially who have been engaging around that. And the Office of the Ombudsman and DCPS who are also coming out. If you need to reach me, I think I'm reachable. You can, here's my email address. I am on Facebook. I will be honest, Facebook is not my ministry, y'all. It is much better to send me an email. I do respond to Twitter pretty quickly, Instagram pretty quickly, and I do send a newsletter monthly. I will respond to you on Facebook as well, but I'm just on it a lot less. If you want to be signed up for my newsletter, you're welcome to just DM me in the chat and I will add you. In the newsletter, I tend to include like, here's what happened at the meeting, here's our SBOE meeting, I'll include video. I also include anything happening like in the community that a family might want to know about. So everything from like scholarships to we're looking for new student reps to here's what's happening at schools. So if there are things that you want me to include, you can email me that as well. And I'm happy to add them because I've learned, as evidenced by my intern, when I asked her to help with this, I was like, why don't you take some time taking a look to see what's happening in the community? And she was like, I don't know where to look. She lives here, she's a student here. She really was like, I don't know where to start. And so that tells me that as a community, we don't have great places to go for people to get information about the resources, about what's happening, because, she's from here, she's living a life, this matters to her. And we need, more people putting together information. This won't get to everybody, but I'll continue to do it at least monthly. So I will stop there. I hope that's helpful. I can't see the chat, but I'm going to stop sharing and hand over privileges because that'll help me a little bit. And I guess let Wendell moderate.
And you can hand those privileges right on to me.
Well, thank you so much, Ebony, for giving that robust update in terms of letting folks know what you've been focusing on. We appreciate you for coming. And at this point in time, we're going to open up the floor for some questions from the audience if folks have any. Well, I guess, were you going to say something, Recording Secretary?
I just wanted the host rights back. That's about it.
I'm trying to do that. Kimba's, so I'm going to mute myself.
Yep, do your thing.
Okay. Well,
Chair, there are some questions in the chat that came through.
Recording Secretary, the floor is yours. I'll let you read those questions off.
That was me, Mr. Chair, the Sergeant at Arms. But one question is about the walk. Someone wanted more details, specifically the time and location, and they wanted to know, will Mr. Lott be there, the Director of DDOT?
Nope.
All right. So
Ms.
let's talk
Douglas,
about
I was asking.
I'm sorry.
Um,
I didn't mean, I apologize. I didn't know. I was,
no worries. Ms. Douglas already knows. Mr. Lott was invited. Director Lott was invited. He would not be there. He was supposed to be there. The walk is on Monday at 10 a.m. And we are starting from Kenilworth Avenue and Quarles Street Northeast. And then we're going to actually walk. So we have a whole route. We're going to walk across one of the sister bridges, come through to Deanwood. We're going to end at Houston Elementary, and then we're going to walk back the Eastern Avenue way to get back to Quarles and Kenilworth. The reason we are taking that particular route, there's a couple of reasons. But first is because we want to highlight just the inadequacy of the remaining bridge. Because like I know as a kid, like I went to Ron Brown for a year, and I had friends who lived in Kenilworth, and that's how I would get to their house. I never felt safe walking across that bridge. And I was a kid, I had a little bit of sense. I have more sense now, but I knew it wasn't safe then. It's still not safe. And one of the things that came up at the hearing that Director Lott actually said was actually, no, it's okay for people to be walking across the remaining bridge. Like it's fine like it is. And we know that's not true. The other reason we're taking that route is because there's this assertion that it's okay for people to walk just a little bit longer. And the two little bit longer routes are actually via Eastern Avenue, which is why we're coming back via Eastern Avenue, or to one of the sister bridges. And we want to show that even right now when it's hot, that's not ideal or safe. And that Eastern Avenue in particular, there are some traffic issues. It's not a pedestrian friendly corridor. There's flooding that happens and you just can't get in and out. In addition to the fact, I think it's one more thing that I'm forgetting. So like all of that, we want to showcase. Oh, and that people will cut across. If like I've already seen, I know Stamper has seen people who are like kids who are like, you know what, I can just make it. Like I could just run. That is a tragedy waiting to happen. And so we want them to understand, not just looking at a map from afar, like this is what it should be, but like what that experience is like for residents.
Okay, I don't see anyone's hand up, but Ebony, can you look at the comment from Eric Rogers? He put in there something about the significance of using, I guess, Uber and taxis, because he used to be the director of that office. I don't want to get that wrong, but he makes a good point. That's something that maybe you can add with your conversation about the whole transit thing.
Okay.
Department of For Hire Vehicles
Thank you.
is there. And they have a Neighborhood Connect, a van, program that connects different neighborhoods to, taxi service. They're taxi vans. You might have seen them throughout the neighborhood. And I was just thinking that might be a good pilot for Ward 7, to your earlier point, Ebony, about these micro transit options.
Okay, I'd love to learn more and talk more about that because we need all the options we could get. I will also say quick plug, if there are things, so one of the things we've done in preparation for this walk is assemble literally the things that the community has been asking around. So like commissioners have sent in 311 requests, notes from meetings they've been a part of around like rebuilding the Parkside Bridge, which is a sister bridge, or letters the commission has sent. And so like we've done our homework and actually will be providing briefing documents to the council members saying like, actually, these are ongoing issues. Like we want you to see it, feel it, experience it. And we've been talking to you about this for years. So if there are other requests that you all know of, hold on, hey, stop. If there are other requests that you all know of, send them our way because we'll add them to our community briefing documents because we want to give the fullest picture possible. Like we want it in writing and we are submitting it as part of the record for that roundtable, which closes Sunday. So we'll submit our briefing documents Sunday. That's the 25th. So it'll be part of the record. And we're taking the walk on Monday with them. If this is actually, I know Michael Havlin reached out, who's one of the Friends of Streetcar people, or, what is it, leaders of that. He was like, maybe it makes sense to take this walk other places so people can see and understand. And I actually think that could be a good idea. And so if there are other places that we should like think about and highlight, especially like as we start to literally, you will see more action around safe passage. That is an avenue to just like make it better for all.
Got you. Well, thank you so much, Ebony. I wish we had more time to answer questions, but in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and go to our next guest speaker today. You still trying to figure out how to?
I think I made the wrong person the host. I think I made Kareem the host.
Let's get close enough.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I will set up Masiki. All right, Masiki, I'm going to actually switch this over to Lawrence because he's got the deck for today and he has your presentation. So hold on 1 second.
Okay, great.
I'll give a quick introduction for Masiki, folks. Masiki's no stranger to Ward 7 or the Ward 7 Dems. He's a passionate young man. He lives in the Eastland Gardens community. He does a lot of work surrounding education. I thought that he would be a phenomenal fit to serve in the role as the Ward 7 Young Dems chair. And he's going to share today what his vision is for the Ward 7 Young Democrats. And we're excited to have them. So with that being said, Masiki, the floor is all yours, my friend.
Thank you, Chairperson, for that introduction. I'm really excited to join everybody this morning to talk about the Young Ward 7 Dems. I think a lot of things that Representative Ebony Rose Thompson talked about is really included in what the vision of this organization or subcommittee looks like for young people and the purpose that it can hold. The last time we met, I explained that there was not much historical knowledge or data left. And so from that time to this time, I've been putting together some infrastructure pieces that'll help guide young people to really move this subcommittee forward. I have to just reiterate that this is youth-led, youth-powered, and many of the things that you see here will be up for the youth to reimagine and re-engage with as they see fit. So this first slide here just talks about the vision, very simple vision, but our vision is to advance the democratic participation of young people ages 18 to 36 who reside in Ward 7. We seek to increase their voter engagement, empower, engage, and educate. And so here we just kind of talked about what some of those things look like for empowerment, to really make sure that we're bringing collective resources, that we're planning advocacy and really uplifting the demands of young folks. You'll notice that in many of the things that I have planned out, we include voter engagement in almost every structure of it. And so making a really clear, concrete goal of what we want to see voter engagement and turnout look like for young folks. We also talk about engagement, being able to connect young folks with these areas that Ebony Rose talked about that need attention with key leaders, ANC commissioners, government agencies, to really bolster their own networking, but then their own political power here in Ward 7 as well. And then finally, what is really important to me, ensuring that there is tailored education at our meetings. Our first meeting will actually have Representative Rose Thompson there to talk about some of the education issues and avenues in Ward 7 to young folks, but also ensuring that we are providing them robust education throughout the experiences of being in the subcommittee. Next slide. Great. This is just a breakdown of the structure of, oh, I love these updates, whoever did this, thank you. there's some color updates in here. So this is just the structure. So there's the chairperson, parliamentarian, vice chair, and secretary. The chairperson is the only person that is appointed, and I think that that's something that can be up for debate or changed later. However, the other three positions in the hierarchy will actually go through an election process. And so we'll talk about that in the months that will happen. But this election process is very much set up like the election process here in Washington, D.C., where young people will have to go out and get signatures from other registered young Democrats in Ward 7 in order to put their name on the ballot for the election. The election will be hosted virtually for now, unless we can get a space for there to be some in person, which I'm not too keen on, but it's set up virtually for now. And this just really goes over what each person does within their own department. The chairperson oversees the committee and works as a liaison between the Ward 7 Young Dems and the Ward 7 Dems to achieve biannual goals and grow membership. They also work to oversee external messaging and media and communications. The vice chair works to establish and committee events, initiatives related to the biannual goals of the committee, and they also oversee the issue groups. Issue groups are formed by young folks around things that they are passionate about, and we'll also talk about that soon. The secretary is responsible for most things that are secretary-ish, all meeting minutes, recording, setting up the Zoom, but also works with the chairperson around the social media and external communications, which is very important because we want to make sure that the Young Ward 7 Dems communications and Twitter doesn't look like my Twitter. That's a joke, sorry. The parliamentary will oversee the Young Ward 7 Dems meeting functions to make sure that we're following Robert Rules of Order, so that way young people get an opportunity to really understand what this process looks like, so they can continue to champion some of the things that are happening here when they leave the Young Ward 7 Dems and move over to the Ward 7 Dems. Next slide. All right, so here's some of the work that's been done. We've created a application and set up meeting dates, a small little Linktree website. So anyone that's interested, if you know any young folks who may be interested in getting in leadership, getting involved in their community, learning more about the democratic process, they can visit us at www.linktree.te/Young Ward 7 Dems, YW7 Dems. And that'll take you to our landing page that will allow you to submit an application, which are reviewed. You get an email like, hey, welcome. And it also gives the general meeting link. So if for whatever reason, people just want to hop on the meeting and don't want to apply, you can always find the meeting link on that website. The meeting link is always the same. So you just go there and click it, it'll take you there. Some important events that we have coming up, as I mentioned earlier, we will be kicking off the elections to fill the cabinet seats, the vice chair, the parliamentarian, and the secretary. Again, if you know young people, I would encourage them to visit, put their application in to ensure that they can continue to get updates about this election process. And then from October to November, we'll be looking to kick off a Ward 7 Youth Summit. This summit is to help us gauge and identify what are the issues, concerns, and immediate advocacy that's needed for young folks here in Ward 7, which will formulate our issue groups. So allowing young people to formulate small groups that are focused on things like transportation, labor, education, that they are passionate about, to really push policies forward through their own subcommittee. This is just a small little graphic that we will send out on social media once we get a social media set up for the Young Ward 7 Dems. Next slide. Okay, so membership structure. So this is draft form as of now, but, and I think somebody mentioned this earlier, finances are very important. And it is very much a part of the electoral process. It's very much a part of the democratic process. And so I want young people to also get an experience with fundraising, being able to submit dues, and give back to an organization that is a part of their development and education and growth. But the way this is set up is a little differently. So it's set up by age brackets. So our young or most youngest Dems, 18 to 25, their membership is completely free. And these are just some of the perks that come with the membership of that bracket. Now, I will say that if an 18-year-old wants to pay a $20 annual membership fee to get some other perks, then that's perfectly fine. And this is completely still in draft form at the moment, only because it was created by me and not a collective. So this is just an idea of how membership can be set up, but it's not graved in stone. So I just really want to put that out there. You may come back with a different cabinet and they may have said, you know, Mizuki, we don't want people to pay anything. That's fine. But this is just the startup structure. Next slide. All right, so here's some 2021 goals, some things that we would like to see happen before the end of the year, the start of our 2022, to make sure that young people really kick the year off in a great fashion and in a great manner. We want to make sure that we establish the Young Ward 7 Dems cabinet, formulate the issue groups, publish our youth summit results, and increase our voter registration by 2 to 5%. So between August and September, you're going to see a launch for an election petition and the actual election. This is going to ask young people to get 20 signatures from other Ward 7 registered youth. If those youth are not registered, they will have the opportunity to take with them voter registration or show them how to register to vote. So that way they can have them as a valid signature on their petition. And there will be a virtual, hopefully, a virtual panel. I know I threw a lot of things in here, but I feel like, you know, reach for the moon, you might catch a star. So there'll be an election panel for those who are interested in the positions, to get people acclimated to public speaking, to talking about their vision, things that are important to them and why they really want to be a part of this process. Once we have our cabinet established, we're going to move forward to establishing the Youth Summit. The Youth Summit, and in my hopes, will happen at Ron Brown. If you got any connections, let me know. But the Youth Summit will host a safe space for youth to come together, to convene with one another in a social distance manner, with masks on, but also to be able to network, to be able to talk about the issues that they have, and to meet with other leaders throughout Ward 7 to really get connected and talk about the initiation of the Young Ward 7 Dems. And then from November to January, we will be formulating our issue groups and ensuring by the start of January that they're off to a good start on whatever advocacy efforts that they find or deem important. You know, I'm just saying this as, I guess, a disclaimer, but I personally feel that my role as the chairperson is to ensure that youth are really moving this forward. I'm 31, so I'm not as youthful as I used to be, but I would love to see, and I think my overall goal is to see that youth are presenting themselves and the issues and the things that are important to them in these meetings and meetings across Ward 7, and are coming up with real critical policy ideas, whether that's for the State Board of Education, whether that's for our council member or our at-large council members, and understanding the structure and process in order to get things done. And I think that's something that can be cumbersome. I know it was something difficult for me to learn moving into a space around advocacy, how to get things done, who to go to. And I want to make sure that as we are formulating this group, putting an infrastructure down, youth are learning that process throughout every stage. So next slide. And that is my presentation. So I'm going to open the floor up for any questions. As always, I'm open to suggestions and ideas. I will say that the board has been meeting with me monthly about topics and issues. We brought up things about the cases for runaways and trying to get a better understanding why students, why youth feel the need to run away. What are some of these safe spaces that are in Ward 7 for youth to convene, and how can we create more of those spaces? So I did just also want to point that out, that is a rolling thing that we have, and we're working with a live document that can be open and seen by anyone as we work through it.
Love it. Well, before we get into community questions, I just want to say, Masiki, or chairperson for the Ward 7 Dems, Ward 7 Young Dems, pardon me. I just want to let you know that I take my hat off to you. I think this was a remarkable presentation, well thought out. It really speaks to the vision of the organization and how we plan to target our young folks. I wish that when I was growing up, I had someone like you to really capture my attention and work to galvanize the young folks in the community. I saw comments in the chat pertaining to why is it that the organization doesn't require dues, but the Ward 7 Young Dems organization does. This is just a proposal. But the reality is, guys, and we have to get out that mentality of not paying for things. It takes money to run an organization and be effective. And, you know, people pay, when you care about something, you pay for it, right? You think of it, $10 won't make or break nobody. It's a meal. People spend $300, $200 on shoes, clothes, the whole nine. So we're reinvesting in our community. And it's not like the money is going out of the community. It's paying for marketing materials, it's paying for promotion, it's paying for events and activities, so we can come together and strategize. When you look at what's happening across the city, the city is crying out. And the reality is, guys, like Ward 7 needs to be unified. And it only comes with engaging with folks. I think the reality is, with the pandemic happening, what's happening in folks' personal lives, folks really don't want to come out and really be engaged. And we have to be innovative and strategic in terms of how we go about with capturing folks' attention and bringing them in a safe space so they can share their thoughts and ideas. So I say all that to say, I don't think that the financial ask is a big ask. I think that for so long we've been operating on, no disrespect at all, on a basic capacity that, you know, we in the new corner. And the reality is, it takes young folks and seasoned folks and middle-aged folks, all folks, to come together and be open to some of the ideas that folks on this call have. So with that being said, I want to open up the floor for community questions. And folks, please feel free to ask our Ward 7 Young chairperson any questions that you may have pertaining to this presentation.
So I first saw Patricia Stamper's hand up, but she put it back down. So Masiki, it looks like he probably needs to be unmuted again, because he also has his hand up. So that's what his hand is for. And so Stamper and then Ebony Rose. Once oh, he's unmuted. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted
to.
I just wanted to add to the fundraising and finance question. When we met with the board, we did also talk about a Ward 7 Young Dems fundraising goal. That part has not been as fleshed out as I would like it to be. And so instead of kind of presenting that haphazardly, that was not a part of this. But fundraising is definitely a part of some of the work that we have moving forward. And I appreciate Councilmember Alexander asking that question. I ran an election, she's ran an election. I think many other people on this call have run elections. And if we want to equip our young people with the reality of what it means to move into leadership in Ward 7 throughout our city or throughout the country, they need to also be equipped with understanding that financing is very, very important to the process. But like Chairperson Felder said, this is just a complete draft. So again, once the cabinet is formed, if they say, hey, this is not something that we're comfortable with, then it's not something that will move forward. So I don't want anybody to, get tied up. Fundraising will be a part of the work that we do, though. I think Patricia Stamper had a question. I'm not sure if she can unmute herself.
How you doing? Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I just arrived at church, but I want to ask say thank you, Valentine, for your presentation. It was beautiful. I think I might be a little too old by the end of the year to still be considered a Ward 7 Young Dem. However, I want to suggest that youth like to go to eat at places, and the Fusion Grill in Deanwood, they have meeting space in the back that maybe we could possibly host the in-person elections there in that space. I'm throwing that out as a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. I really like that.
In Sergeant of Arms, I can't remember who was next. Was it Miss Rose?
Sorry, I lowered my, oh, and I should say, I know it gets confusing. My first name is Ebony Rose, you guys. My last name is Thompson. Because yeah, there are people who be like Miss Rose or Miss Rose Thompson. It's my first name. I don't know where the organization will decide to go with the fee question. I mean, I'll say, and this is just as somebody who I work in foundations. So like I literally work in a foundation. Like I give money away. I do grants. I do not asking for money, but giving money. Individual money is really important. Like individual member, it's what you call like general operating funds. And it can show like the power of an organization. I do also take former council member Alexander's point as far as just like having it be equal. So like if you older than 37 and you're just a Ward 7 Dem, you don't have to pay to be a member. And so maybe there is something, maybe there's something in between. Like maybe it is that you can be a member for free, but there are other ways to show that like individual contributions, because I think that's important. I'm happy to work with the young, I guess I would still be a young Dem to think about like what that structure looks like. But I definitely see the value in what you all are trying to do. And will say that like, I know a lot of people, for us is when we instituted dues as an Ed Council, which is a membership organization. But we also we've always had in place that if you can't pay the $10, somebody else could pay it for you. Like there are ways to both demonstrate like the individual giving and like the power of really being bought into an organization and being able to provide for people who can't participate. And so I'm happy to have an offline conversation with Masiki and others.
And we do
that. Yeah.
We do have both of those systems set in the live document about the system is that we have a pay it forward option. So if you are a $10 dues paying and you want to give another 10 for somebody else, that is an option. And then if for whatever reason you really, for the year, you just cannot give it, then there's an option to be able to have a conversation with me and just say, hey, I really cannot give it. Being a teacher for 10 years, one thing I've always said to my students is if, no offense against snacks, but if you can spend $1.12 on a bag of Funyuns once a week, take that $1.12, save it for 10 weeks, and imagine the money that you would have after that. And I think it's a mindset about how we use money, how we ask for money, and where it goes, and the transparency. So a part of it is also the type of transparency that will come from where the money is going, how it is being used, and how it empowers and impacts young folks of Ward 7.
Got you. Well, I appreciate the questions that were asked. In the interest of time, guys, if there are no additional questions, we're going to move on. Next on the agenda, guys, is old business. I'm going to turn the floor over to our second vice chair, Mr. Kareem Marshall, to give an update. on where
Good
things-
morning, Good morning, everybody. Next slide, please. Okay, so just as a bylaws update, we've recirculated a revised draft just to give everyone another chance to look at the document. When the post-meeting email goes out with this PowerPoint, you will see, it's also in the chat too, but when the post-meeting email goes out, you'll get this page that has live links that will again give you an opportunity to use the feedback form, a clean version of the edited document, and a track changes version of the edited document. Additionally, we will do a second bylaws committee open house where the content of the bylaws can be discussed in detail. The Zoom link for that will also be in the post-meeting version of this document when you get it. The previous meeting that we had was sparsely attended, so we want to make sure that we give people an opportunity to ask questions. If I completely understand, like I did rulemaking for a DC government agency for a really long time, so I understand that we can have issues around access if you require everybody to give their feedback in writing. So we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to give verbal feedback if that's the venue they're most comfortable with. So it'll be September 8th. It'll be Wednesday, September 8th at 7 p.m. We'd love for you to be able to attend. It's really just going to be more of a conversation, so don't feel like you have to be super well versed in the content of the bylaws. If you have just a general question about operations and how the changes in the bylaws will enhance our operations, please feel free to show up and ask questions. Please feel free to show up and have recommendations if you have any. The vote on the bylaws will be at the September 25th, 2021 general membership meeting. And as Chairman Felder said earlier, this meeting might be in person. So we're going to need to be a little bit thoughtful about how to handle those procedures if we're doing a hybrid meeting. So we'll keep you posted as to the procedures to make sure that everybody's voice can be heard. If there are any questions, I will take them, but feel free to, I'm sorry, Mr. Brandon, is that a question for the bylaws? I'm sorry, we'll get to that question in more detail. But yeah, this is the update. This is where we are. We're going to do the vote on September 25th. We'd love for you to be able to show up at the open house on September 8th. I promise I will make it as entertaining as possible. There is a way to make procedure entertaining, so I look forward to seeing you guys there. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or email us at the info@ward7dems.org email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Second Vice Chair. Are there any questions? Seeing that there are none, next slide. At this point in time, guys, if there are any community announcements, residents have 2 minutes to share their announcements. We want to open the floor. Cool. Well, next slide, please. Well, guys, we're concluding the end of this meeting, and I just want to thank folks for coming out to the 4th Ward 7 Dams meeting. I want folks to enjoy the remainder of their summer. I alluded to this early on. There's a strong possibility that we may be meeting in person in September. In the interim, guys, please be on the lookout to anything that we're going to send to folks, primarily the newsletter, as well as the marketing material for the upcoming fundraising events. But if there are no additional questions or concerns, and if all hearts and minds are clear, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, actually, there was one announcement. One announcement from Philip Fennell. Hold on, let me find him so I can unmute him. There he is.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, good morning, Mr. President.
Hey, Mr. Philip, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I hope everyone else is okay. As you know, I'm not a resident, so if you would permit this interloper to do a little interlocutoring, I can make my announcement.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, as we all know, DC statehood is first and foremost a civil and human rights a struggle. And one of the problems we have had over the years in terms of the DC statehood movement is getting young people involved. And I mean really young people. Dr. Martin Luther King and the other civil rights leaders were unabashed and unapologetic about involving young people, even elementary school children. So we have to do the same. So to that end, the Anacostia Coordinating Council wrote a proposal and received a small grant from the Office of the DC Secretary to sponsor an east of the river Youth Voices for Statehood contest. And I am pleased to say that the response was good. And the Ward 7 students really showed up. They constitute around 70 to 75% of the submissions. So there will be concert on a youth concert for statehood on Friday, August the 6th, from 6 to 8 p.m. At the Secret Garden at 1920 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast. The price is right, it is free. At that time, not only will we have great music, but we will showcase the winners. And I am pleased to say that the Ward 8 Democrats president and the Ward 7 State Board of Education member are both judges in the contest. So I hope that some of the Ward 8 Democrats will be able to show up at the concert to acknowledge, cheer on, and support our youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Philip Purnell. I think also I'm a judge as well. I responded to your email, so I'll look forward to seeing you out there, and hopefully some folks from Florida come out there as well to be supportive. Going back to concluding the move, I saw that former councilwoman had a comment pertaining to the John Lewis tribute. For folks who, I'm pretty sure everyone's aware, but John Lewis was a instrumental figure in the civil rights movement, and he was a huge supporter for young folks. So it wasn't that we were actually given a tribute. Typically, we like to have themes. So having Miss Ebony Rose Thompson and Masiki Valentine come out today, them being young leaders in the ward, and knowing how supportive John Lewis was, we wanted to follow that theme for this Ward 7 Dems meeting. And as we transition into the fall, what folks will start noticing is we'll typically have a theme before the meeting takes place, just to, try to get folks to come out, and folks maybe only interested in coming out to things that are specifically related to their interests. So that's what that was about, Councilwoman. But thank you for your comment. Well, other than that, guys, if all hearts and minds are clear, thank you guys, and I will see you guys hopefully in person in September, or in the interim during a community meeting, or in the back of Yvette's house when if we have a barbecue, or my house. Everybody's invited. But thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys soon.